show you 4 different things you can make out of an ordinary soup can. To make these things, you're going to want to have a clean can, and you're going to want to remove any labels that are on the can. Unless, of course, you have a can like this where the label is painted on. And then it might be kind of cute just to leave it that way. The first project we're going to do is a lantern. So after you've cleaned your can and you've removed the label, you're going to want to fill it with water and put it in the freezer until it's completely frozen solid. And the reason you want to do this is because it will prevent your can from getting dents in it when you're making holes in it. To make the holes, you're going to need a thick nail, as thick as you have lying around, and a hammer. And I'm using a hand towel here to keep my can from moving around too much and slipping around, because the outside does get a little icy after it's been in the freezer for a while. And you can just start by pounding holes into your can anywhere you like, or you can draw a design first. To make the design, you're going to want to measure how large your can is and make your paper that height, and wrap your paper around the can and trim it so it fits nicely around the can. I wanted to make kind of an asterisk, kind of a star shape. And so I drew my lines first, and then I made some larger dots where I thought I might like to hammer in the holes. So I'm going to take this paper and find the nicest part of my can here and wrap it around. And put some tape on it, just to hold it into place. That'll do it. And maybe I'll tuck my towel in a little bit. And if your can is a little cold to work with, you could wear a pair of gloves, because sometimes it is very, very cold holding onto that can with the frozen water in it. So now, I'm going to take my hammer and my nail, and be careful you don't pound your fingers or your hand when you're hammering your hammer into your nail. Just kind of start tapping it. Until you get a nice hole. And remove your nail. So I've made my first nail hole in the middle of my star here. And then I'm just going to take my nail and hammer and keep going until I have my entire design finished. Now I'm noticing that where I drew my circles, it's not always an ideal place now that I look at how big my holes are. So sometimes, even with a drawing that you've done, you need to adjust a little bit as you go. All right. I've knocked out as many holes as I want in my lantern. And of course, you could do something on the opposite side as well. Now, you can see that when you set the lantern down, it doesn't quite sit right because the ice has pushed out the bottom. If you want this to be a tabletop lantern, when the ice melts and you dump out all the water, you can just take your hammer and bang this in so that the bottom of the can is nice and flat. But I don't actually need to do that, because I'm going to make mine a hanging lantern so that I could hang it from my porch or in another place that might be nice to have a lantern. To make the hanging lantern, I need to put 4 holes in the top, and the holes are going to be opposite each other. So I'm going to put 1 hole on one side, and then directly opposite, I'm going to put another one, and then I'll put a hole on the other side and do another one directly opposite. So I have 4 holes that are equal distant from each other to make my hanging lamp. Now hopefully a little bit of my ice chipped out of here, so I'm hoping that when I do this, I don't dent my can too much. And I suppose since this is going to be a hanging lamp, I could bang some holes in the bottom too. So now I'll remove my paper because I don't really need it anymore. And it would probably be easiest to do the next step after the ice dries. After the ice melts and the can is dry. But for the purpose of today's lesson, I'm just going to go ahead and complete this step. Now, when you look inside the can, you'll see where you bang the holes, little bits of metal are poked in. That is very, very sharp. So be very careful not to cut yourself. You may even want to put on some leather gloves or something to protect your hands to do the next step, or have an older sibling or an adult in the house help you with the next part. But you're going to need some wire to hang your lantern. You could use a nice thin gauge wire like this jewelry wire. You can use a thicker wire like this armature wire, which I think is what I'm going to use today. This wire is really nice because it's stiff and bendy at the same time. It's very easy to manipulate, but it bends very easily. And it cuts easily too. I probably could even cut this wire with a pair of scissors, but I'm going to use this little wire cutter here. And let's see. I guess probably need it right about there. I'm just going to bend up a little piece of wire like this. And you can do this with your hands. I happen to have some jeweler's pliers, but you could use needle nose pliers, or you could probably even just twist it with your fingers. I'm going to stick my wire from the inside going out. And let's see, maybe I can just do this with my fingers instead of using the pliers. And I'll wrap it around just enough so that it doesn't come undone. And then I'll just take my pliers and kind of smush down the end. Okay, so it kind of looks like my lantern would hang nicely just like that. But if you want to add another wire to go in the opposite direction, cut a little bit of this off. I suppose you could use string, but the reason I didn't want to use string is because it's flammable. And if I am going to put a candle in this, I didn't really want to have something that could potentially burn, which is why I'm using wire and not string. All right, so now I have a hanging lantern. So when the ice melts, I'll hang it outside and put a candle in it. It'll be quite nice. Our next soup can project is going to be a wind chime. So again, I've cleaned my can and removed the label and put water in it and put it in the freezer until it's frozen solid. Now a wind chime needs to hang, right? So in the bottom of my can, I'm going to put a couple of holes so that when the ice melts, I'll have a place to put my hanger, which is just going to be some string or some wire. And you want to kind of do this in the middle so that your can doesn't hang too crooked. So I just put 2 holes in the bottom so that when the ice is gone, I can feed a piece of string or a piece of wire through these holes and tie it and hang it. And then I have some lids of cans that I saved. Now, my can opener is the kind of can opener that leaves a very sharp edge on the lid after you've cut the lid off the can. Some can openers don't. Some can openers actually can make a smooth edge, but mine is not one of those. So if yours is not one of those as well, just be very careful because the edges are sharp, not only on the can, but not only on the lid, but on the can as well. It can be sharp in here. So just be very careful. So I have 3 lids here, and you could do as many as you want, but I'm just going to do 3 for today. So I'm going to make 3 holes towards the top of the opening in my can. So I have my 3 holes now in the can. I'm just going to put my towel aside. And now I need to put holes in my lids so that I can hang them from the holes in the can. So I just have a piece of scrap lumber. I always save pieces of wood because you always need them for something eventually. So I have a space where I save little pieces of scrap lumber. And I'm going to use this so I don't wreck my table. So I'm going to take my hammer and nail and make a hole in my lid. And again, where you've made your hole, that's very, very sharp. Do the next one. It might be kind of fun to use different size lids, or even where you've made your holes, you could hang a lid from the center so that it hits those as well. Which actually, maybe I will do that. Now that I think about it, maybe I'll use a 4th lid for that center. I'll use this nice big one that I have. Because the more stuff you put on it, the more sound it's going to make, right, when the wind blows. So now that the ice has melted out of my wind chime, I'm going to put the pieces together. So the first thing I'm going to do is put my string into the top. This is just cotton twine. You can use whatever string will fit into the holes that you made in your can. So I'll insert one string through one of the holes. Again, be sure to avoid any sharp points, either from where your can opener opened your can or from where you punched the holes in. So I brought my string through, and then I'm going to thread it through the next hole. Now I'm having trouble threading my string, but I have a trick. If you take a piece of thin wire and you fold it in half, like this, so it makes a little loop, you can stick it into your hole and then you can thread your string into the wire loop like this and pull it back through the hole. Now that was a lot easier than trying to thread it with my fingers. Plus I avoided some of the sharp edges that are in there. Now if you don't have a little piece of wire like that, you'll just have to keep trying until it gets in there. I'm going to make my string there we go. Hangs pretty well. It's a little crooked, but not bad. And I'm just going to tie off the end here. There we go. And then I can put in a nail or a hook on my porch, and it'll hang like this. And now I'll do the same things for my lids. Now remember, I was going to hang a center lid, a big one, so I'm just going to pull my string out a little bit. And I don't know, cut a string that's longer than the height of my can here. And I'm going to tie one end to my hanging string. And let's see how far that hangs down. Well, it hangs down pretty low. I kind of want my first lid to hang, I don't know, right about there, I guess. There we go. So now I have my first chime. And of course, we're going to need to go around and hang the other 3 lids. This time, I'm going to tie my string to my lid first. Watching out for those sharp edges. So I certainly don't want to cut myself. If you're really worried about the sharp edges, you could put a piece of tape around the edge. I just didn't really like the way the tape looked. So I'm going to just risk it. And I'm being very careful, so I haven't cut myself on those sharp edges. Okay, so now with the next 3 lids, since I have this center clanger here, I'm going to want to make sure that my lid is in a position where it can hit that, so when the wind blows, it clangs together. Now, I like the way this looks with the can being shiny metal and the chimes also being shiny metal. But if you wanted to make it colorful, or you wanted to make it so it doesn't look so much like a soup can, you could spray paint it or paint it with some kind of permanent paint to change the look of it. But I kind of like this. So I'm ready to hang this outside now. The next thing I'm going to make out of a can is a planter. Now, this can didn't have a paper label. It has a label printed on the can itself. And since this is pizza sauce, I thought it might be fun to plant some basil in this can. And this is very simple to do. All you need to do is turn your can upside down and tap one hole into the bottom of the can. That will allow for drainage when you water your plants, because you don't want your plant roots sitting in standing water. But you do want to be able to water all the way down to the bottom. So that's why that hole is very important, just like it is in any flower pot. And then I have some potting soil here. I will put into my can. Now remember, the can edges can be sharp. So I'm using this trowel here to put the soil in to avoid touching the edge of the can. This makes kind of a mess. Probably should have done this outside. That's all right, I'll just clean the table when I'm done. Okay, so you're going to want to fill your can with soil until there's about 3/4 of an inch space to the top. Because you're not going to want to fill the can all the way to the top, because when you water it, you don't want the water to spill out over the side. You want to leave a little room for watering. Plus you need to plant your seeds. And these seeds need to be planted, let's see, with 1/8 of an inch of soil. So it doesn't need that much on top. So I'll open my seeds here. Just enough. to sprinkle in the can. And you won't want to put them all in one place. You want to space them apart. And then put just a little bit of soil on top. And then I'll just water it and put it in a very sunny window. And in a few weeks, it will start to sprout. The last thing I'm going to make with my soup can is a storage cup for things like paintbrushes, colored pencils, regular pencils, markers. Now, since my can opener leaves a sharp edge when I take the lid off the can, I'm going to line this top area where it's sharp with some tape. Now, I happen to be a crafty person, so I have lots of fun things like decorative tape around my art studio. But if you don't have any cute tape like this, you could use some painter's tape, which is a nice color blue. You could use masking tape, which is kind of an off-white color. You could use duct tape, which is often the color of the can. But any tape that you can put around the edge that's nice and permanent will work to make it so your can isn't so sharp. Now that I have the tape on the inside of the can, I want to decorate my can. So I've cut a piece of paper that fits all the way around the can with some overlap so that when I want to glue it to the can, I have a little paper to put the glue on and overlap it to stick. I also cut it so that there's a little bit of the edge here and here, so you can still kind of see the metal a little bit, but it's mostly covered. So to decorate, I'm going to remove my paper, and I could draw on this, I could paint on this, I could decorate it any way I like. I have some colorful dots of construction paper. I have one of those fancy punches that punches out circles. You could cut out your shapes. You could, if you know, these come in all different kinds of shapes. They come in stars and flowers and moons and all kinds of things. But I just have the circle, but I like the circle because you can do so much with it. And I'm going to try to just lay out my design with my different color dots. And I don't know, I think that's kind of cute. I think maybe I'll add another dot over here. Yeah, I think I like that. So I'm going to start gluing my dots to my paper. All right, let me put this last dot on here. Now you'll notice that with the design I made, I left a little space on one side because the paper is going to overlap when I glue it to the can. So I wanted to make sure that I left a little space. Now I suppose it doesn't matter if you cover up what you put there, but if you don't want to cover it up, leave a little space. So I will flip my paper over and line it up with the can. And put a little glue on the place where the paper is going to overlap. And with glue, you don't need a ton of glue. You need just enough for it to stick. And then you need to wait for it to dry, of course, before it's really going to stick. So now that my glue is completely dry, all I need to do now is put things inside of it. And now I have a nice storage container for my desk. If you would like to share your project with us, you can email photos to info, at catskillartsociety.org, and we'll put your photos up on our Facebook and Instagram pages so we can share them with everybody who follows our social media pages.